All right, everyone, we are back. It's another RomaPress podcast. We hope you are doing well. Roma, they progress in the Europa League over Brighton in the second leg. Although they are defeated, they still progress on aggregate. Before we get into that, of course, thank you to all of our wonderful patrons at Patreon. If you'd like to join, patreon.com/RomaPress. And then at IS Roma Press on all of the social media channels, including YouTube for the video version. And again, all of you who have subscribed, liked all of the things on Twitter and Facebook as well. It is greatly appreciated. We've only been doing this, the video version of the podcast for 5 to 6 months now, but the response and the support that we have gotten from all of you is immensely appreciated. So thank you to everyone who has shared, subscribed, and as I mentioned, been supporting us since we started this, the video version of the podcast. So it makes nights like tonight interesting, Andy, because should I say that was entertaining? I couldn't imagine, because what I was between the weather and the actual play on the pitch, I kept thinking, and this is potentially the more humanitarian side of me coming out, I suppose. I always think about, or I suppose I just assume that there's a Roma supporter having to pay money to travel to all of these matches. They go and watch, and the experience of having to take in certain matches. Between the weather tonight and the actual play on the pitch, oof. But they progress. So I find myself in this very weird retrospective state, because I think to myself, okay, well, it has been some time since Roma finished top four. But as far as European success goes, do we want to venture back into when the last time we had this good run? Because the history books, you will go very, very far back.
You mean the history of the Roma?
The history of the Roma.
The Roma.
You have to go back very far, very, very far. So that is the thing I suppose I want to start with, only because, again, nobody's going to mistake Roma for having done very well in Serie A. Nobody can convince of that. Nobody can say it with a straight face. However, I suppose to what degree it has done so, this run that they have had in Europe for 3 years now, 3 straight seasons of very strong success in Europe, I'm not going to say it completely negates or entirely balances out the lack of success domestically. It's something, though. I mean, it at least helps lighten the blow, I suppose. It is interesting to me, because obviously the dynamic of a European tournament is far different than the long marathon of a domestic league campaign. So I think as far as the mentality required for something like Europa League, Champions League, so on and so forth, is obviously vastly different than that of Serie A. We don't have to look further than Sevilla for clubs that have sort of specialized, I suppose, so to speak, in this. I'm not going to say throwing the domestic campaign, but certainly giving a large amount of focus, attention, and energy to Europa League, to Champions League, for qualifying and doing well in Europe. So I'm not going to sit here and say that that is exactly what Roma has done. However, it is interesting to see that, although, yes, underwhelming in Serie A, I mean, to see this again, I mean, to win Conference League, to go to Europa League final, and now, again, Europa League quarterfinal, it is impressive, okay? We at least have to admit that. I know it might, on the face of it, it might not look or jump off of the page to anybody, but if you have been doing this and watching as long as we have, I mean, this is. I mean,
we were there when Florenzi pulled the shirt on the Porto player. We were there, the last time we crashed out of the Champions League, and We were there when Lyon eliminated us, and 45-year-old Francesco Totti was sprinting back to on the counter, on Lyon's counter, and it was just the saddest sight ever. So we were there.
With one of the best Roma too. Yeah, I mean 2016, 2017. That Lyon fixture, man, still haunts me.
Lyon were excellent, and we saw that. We
Yes.
saw Roma crash out of that. We saw Roma crash out of Champions League numerous times. So, tonight we find ourselves sitting in front of this display, which I think was expected, considering the number of changes that
Yes.
Roma had to make, which they had to, because again, Lukaku was out. Dybala, you have to rest him at some point. If not now, when? And I think that all things considered, always going into a very difficult environment, you had to take into consideration that this was, despite no matter what De Rossi was going to say, De Rossi said that it's going to be a beautiful game, that it's going to be exciting. I think part of us always expected this game to sort of be like, you have to let the time pass. You have to buy yourself some time. You have to let the clock run out. That's it. You just don't want Brighton to get back into this tie. And I think for the most part, we did that. I mean, we witnessed a lot of questionable refereeing, a lot of awful decision making on the part of a referee that I do not think was up to it tonight. And then, more importantly, we saw a lot of players that did not receive enough minutes. I mean, just the fact that we had 3 changes. I mean, De Rossi made 3 substitutions today. One of them was at the 92nd minute. That tells you all you need to know. Like, De Rossi was resting guys. He was resting guys. He didn't want Paulo Dybala to see the pitch. He wanted Sardar Azmoun to stay out there as long as possible. He wanted Tommaso Baldanzi to get his 80 minutes in. So Tommaso Baldanzi, I thought, was a highlight tonight. We can get into that later on. Overall, this was not a thriller. It was never meant to be a thriller. It was meant to be Roma going into a hostile stadium and still coming out victorious at the end of the day. And that's what we got.
That's exactly what we got. For me, I don't think you either were in the boat of, well, they really have to put out a strong formation. I think we all knew that they were going to do some changes. Frankly, I think Azmoun, the guy is born for a match like this. Ugly, having to work very, very hard, do the little things that you are just not going to get from Lukaku, Dybala. He is willing to do those tiny things, those ugly things, the things that do not show up on the data sheet, so to speak. So I think to include him, it was a no questions asked sort of decision. I thought including him was always going to happen. Baldanzi, as you said, I thought he was a highlight. I mean, this was, and we say highlight probably in the loosest sense of the term, because at least from Roma's standpoint, it is not as if there were many highlights. I'm waiting to see in the media hub what UEFA puts out for the highlights and the match notes, because as far as highlights go, few far in between. And even on top of that too, Brighton, for a team that had to come out and create. I mean, to finish with an XG under 1.5, color me not impressed. I thought for sure that Zerbi would come up with something a bit more clever, I suppose. I mean, other than obviously Welbeck, he gets his goal right before the half. Were you ever worried for Roma? Because at no point did I think to myself, oh my gosh, did I start to sweat at any point in this match? The lead, I didn't start to worry that they were beginning to crumble. I didn't even for a moment think to myself, oh, the old Roma is back. Here we go again. Which, again, in and of itself is almost impressive, because how many other clubs going into a second leg up 4-0? We are probably one of the handful where you think to yourself, well, at least historically, they have proven that, well, 4 may not be enough. that's what happens when you lose 7-1, 7-0, 7-2, as many times as Roma has in Europe. They have to live with that. But at no point did I think Roma were under pressure, that they weren't up to it. Again, I thought Brighton would come out close to 30 shots.
There was no sense of urgency from Brighton.
No.
I expected them to feed off that crowd much more than in the end. Especially given the kind of squad that Roma had. I mean, we can argue, okay, yeah, Pellegrini was there, Mancini was out there, but again, you had, I mean, somebody like Tommaso Baldanzi. The guy was playing against Salernitana. That was his peak. I mean,
right.
This is the first time on this kind of stage for a guy like Baldanzi. Asmoon called into action after being faced with a lot of bench time since
yes.
match against Salernitana, or was it? Yeah. So
it was
overall, yes. You had Bove also faced with a lot of limited playing time. Zaleski faced with a lot of. At the end of the day, this was all about Roma, like it or not, sort of getting
surviving.
A result. Surviving, getting a result either way, slowing down the tempo. I mean, De Rossi right now is saying that they could have done better in that aspect, that perhaps they let Brighton control the ball a bit too much. Maybe you would have benefited from still finding a way to be yourself. But I think it's always a challenge when you make this number of changes. Like tonight, clearly the priority was surviving. You don't put tonight. You don't see Dybala out there because the priority is shifted all of a sudden dramatically. After that, those first 45 minutes, De Rossi senses that Brighton are not in it, so he's not going to put Dybala out there. Why? You have a weekend fixture against Sassuolo that's enough of a pain in the ass. So why would you waste somebody like Dybala out there? So overall, I think, some situations could have been handled better. Roma could have done more with the ball at their feet the few times they had it. But we talk about expectations always. It's about in the Europa League and Conference League in the past. It's always about the expectations when you go into a return leg. It's always about delivering on the tone that you set in the first leg. And in the first leg, yes, Roma, it went really well. They put themselves in a position where they could have a game like tonight. So are you entertained? Probably as a neutral fan, not that much. But as a Roma fan, this should have been handled the way it was tonight. It's maybe a goal scored would have been nice for Roma, but at the end of the day, it's Brighton's turf. Brighton were the team looking to score. Brighton were the desperate side. Roma once again find themselves in a position that other teams have been trying to be in for the past few years without success. Roma achieved this quarterfinals relatively easily. So I don't see reasons to complain tonight.
No, but can I throw something out to you? Because UEFA just updated it now. I got an alert in the media, in this media hub. Roma, they jumped Manchester United in the club coefficient. So Roma are now 9th. I don't know what to do with that because everybody likes to throw that out there every now and again. That is one of those Gazzetta dello Sport things that they throw that in there as one of those weird data points, as they are about to do, I assume, with the country coefficients, as we all remember. I guess this was one of their, I won't say sad attempts to at least curb appeal of the Super League, but as we remember, the two countries that finish atop the club coefficients, they will get the extra Champions League place. Currently, we have the Premier League at the top, La Liga, Serie A, and then the Bundesliga. I don't know why I'm saying the league name. It should be the country. But nonetheless, Serie A currently sits 3rd, 2 points behind Spain. So good. Just this is something some of the patrons have done in the group chat. They said, well, 5th should be enough. First off, to even have that sort of mindset is Roma are the last team that can afford to think, oh, well, we're going to get the extra Champions League place so we can settle for fifth. I'm not even going to venture down that path. That is something we can discuss as we get closer to May. So obviously now we have Roma into a quarterfinal. We have a match upcoming against Sassuolo, and things are starting to tighten now as far as the calendar goes. We knew we would get to this point sometime during the season. I thought it would be far earlier because, again, as you said in the previous episode, nobody could have envisioned that it would have gone this well when De Rossi first came on. But now Roma find themselves what? Let me pull it up just to ensure that I am not speaking out of turn here. So Roma, they currently, as we know, they sit fifth in Serie A. So they are 3 points behind the fourth place Bologna. So their upcoming calendar, we have Sassuolo at the weekend, and then we have international break. And then after that, things become very, 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 very tight. So as far as the league goes, after the international break, you go away to Lecce, fun. The derby, away to Udinese, which means going to Friuli, which means fun. Home to Bologna, away to Napoli, home to Juve, away to Atalanta, so trip to Bergamo, fun. And then home to Genoa, away to Empoli, and then home to Milan. So just from a league standpoint, very difficult. Very difficult.
I know,
Now
John.
you add this into it.
I know.
Well, now,
so I'm just gonna quote you the famous scene in Heat, where Tom Sizemore, remember Robert De Niro gathers his gang for that big robbery, and he's like, you don't have to choose this. You don't have to accept this. This is on me. Anybody does what they want. And Tom Sizemore is like,
R.I.P. Tom Sizemore. Didn't he die just like 1 or 2 years ago?
Yeah,
relatively recently.
Yeah. 2 years ago. And Tom Sizemore takes this moment. He's like, for me, the action is the juice. And that's. For me, to say, I need the danger. I need the risk. I need it. I can't live without it. I mean, when you look at this schedule with Roma, think about where we were when De Rossi joined. I couldn't wait for the season to be over. When De Rossi joined, remember our discussion on here about the Europa League?
Yes.
Both of us were like, punt it.
We said bin it. Yes.
Punt it, throw it out. Don't think about it. Forget about it. And fast forward 2 months, and we are here, and we're sitting, and we're thinking, well, you know what? It's difficult, yes. But at the end of the day, when is it easy? And the way that Roma have been handling so far these competitions, obviously, tonight, what is the second loss in De Rossi's tenure?
Yes.
Tonight, it's the second loss. So first
loss was
Inter, and
now like Brighton. It was weeks ago. I mean, or I should say months ago.
Ages ago. Yes, ages ago. But I think I think the team has shown enough to make us think about this quarterfinals that we've just qualified for with perhaps not hope, but at least some enthusiasm that was not there. It just wasn't there. I mean, prior to Feyenoord, it was dead in the water. Europa League, I couldn't bring myself to even think about the Europa League after that Slavia Praha match. That 2-0 defeat against Slavia Praha just took the win out of me. I thought, forget about this competition. This team doesn't have it. And then yet here we are. And this team, they still grind it out. There's just something, whether, yes, it's Mourinho mentality or whatever. They grind it out. Tonight, they grinded it out. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't great. It wasn't great football. It wasn't great entertainment. But here we are. We're talking about a team qualifying to a quarterfinal for what? The fourth consecutive year. So there has to be something there.
Yeah, I mean, it's mad when you think about the European success relative to the lack of success in Serie A. I don't know what it means because I think it is far too simple to say, well, a league campaign takes 8 months, a tournament competition such as Europa League, Conference League, whatever it may be, takes a different mentality. There's obviously a longer break in between. You still have to win. Like at the end of the day, it's still a game. It's still a sport. You have to go out there. You have to put the ball into the back of the net. You have to score, and you have to prevent the other team from doing so. So at the end of the day, regardless of the format in which the competition is played out, it still requires a team to go out there and to win. And it's interesting to me. I don't know if it is simply down to the format of it or the calendar of it or the different sort of mentality required to make your way through to a tournament. I mean, if you had to put your finger on it, what I mean, to be honest with you, I thought part of it had to do with Jose Mourinho coming. It is obviously, I think, a bit unfair to say that is worn off by now. But definitely that plays a portion to it.
Sure. But then there comes the question of, well, we are yet to see that because fourth consecutive time we qualified to the quarterfinal. But how many times out of these 4 times did we see Roma maintain a positive league record as they continued their European campaign? Not enough. Not many. Probably 0. Because every time we went through to this stage, it coincided with our worst stretch, or eventually we just lost gas. That happened most notably last year. We were sitting 3rd right around this time. I remember I landed
right around this time.
I landed in Newark, of all places. I landed in Newark on the day that Roma were playing Real Sociedad, the infamous Real Sociedad game where they drew 0-0 in San Sebastian to qualify. And at that point in time, Roma were 3rd in Serie A table.
Yes.
In the next 2 or 3 weeks, the Serie A table looked completely differently. Roma had dropped to 6th or 7th. So it can happen. That's the question is, now, do they have it in them? And does De Rossi have it in him to change that course? Because so far, it is the fact that tonight they qualified doesn't really change much in terms of our perspective on this team. We all knew that this team had built up something in terms of European pedigree over these last few years. But have they learned their lesson? Have they learned how to manage their energy levels, their fitness levels? Most importantly, their fitness levels. This also depends, obviously, on the staff, on the training, on the intensity behind it. Because if you slip up now, you go from being in an excellent position on both fronts to being in a complete disaster zone. And so, if there is something that I want to know, if Roma at least, they don't have to deliver me the great success. They don't have to win a trophy for me. They don't. This team, the moment that Mourinho walked away, I said it, the team changed, and I have to evaluate it based on different criteria. But can they show me at least a step in the right direction? At least just, hey, yes, quarterfinals is great, but look at us. We don't forget about Serie A. Because last year, we remember what happened. Roma qualified to the Europa League quarterfinal. They win against Real Sociedad in San Sebastian. They qualified to the next round. And then they start just playing Missori. They start playing Tahirovic, obviously because of the injuries, but also because the mentality was preserve the energy for the Europa League.
Right.
I just want
you mentioned the injuries too. I still remember you and I recording when Paulo Dybala got hurt.
Chris Smalling and Paulo Dybala both out within the same week. So it was massive. It was massive. But you still are expected to compete. To compete. That's all I want to see is if can this team compete in Europa League and Serie A? Because I'm looking at these potential opponents in Europa League.
Yeah, we have to do it. Yeah, who do you want? I mean,
Except for Bayer
at this point, there's
Leverkusen.
really no easy escape.
Except for
There's
Bayer
no easy escape.
Leverkusen, there is no easy escape. But Bayer Leverkusen scared the hell out of me. I look at the other
And then you
teams,
saw them against,
Karabakh.
yeah, against.
You know
Well,
who won?
I
You
mean,
know,
they.
Patrick Schick, the brace in the final minutes. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a throwback right
Well,
there.
I have been following him probably more than I should have. I've watched more German football this year than I think I have in my life, simply to follow him. It's been interesting with the injuries and watching him not really being able to get into the good graces. But I mean, I'm looking at this. So the 8 teams that are through, we have Atalanta, we have Roma, Leverkusen, Liverpool, Benfica, Milan, Marseille, West Ham. I mean, what are we supposed to say? So yeah, you can now, as unlike this previous round, you can play teams. Obviously, it is an open draw, so you can get teams from your own country. I mean, I'm not going to even venture to say who.
No, but
If
it would be.
Gattuso is still the manager of Marseille, I would probably say
Yeah,
give
but
it
they changed,
to
and they've
right.
been on a run. So, but wouldn't it be great to wipe that smirk off of Gian Piero Gasperini's face? Wouldn't it be extremely satisfying? Or
I
wouldn't it
mean,
be
there is a
satisfying?
lot.
Wouldn't it be satisfying to be the root cause of Stefano Pioli's sacking at Milan? Um,
I mean, if I begin to
a
say
man
of the
who's
things that I would like
a
to
man who got
impose
Mourinho
onto,
sacked.
yeah, well, listen, there are a lot of things I would like to do, not only to Atalanta, but the entire place of Bergamo. I have not been shy about my thoughts of the place.
No, you have not.
I will keep it quiet. I mean, I'm looking at this. I listen. Yeah, Atalanta. I suppose. Yeah. Give me Atalanta. Because I'm looking at this as to who feasibly, if we are looking at the most difficult
Right.
trip away from
West
Rome,
Ham. I mean, West Ham could also be an inch. I mean, I think I see these English teams struggle away from home.
It's a great point. Yeah,
They struggle. They struggle away from home. English teams struggle. So I don't know. I mean, West Ham obviously coming off as Conference League winners, so also that has to give them some kind of boost. But in the end,
yes.
I think at this stage, I mean, except for Bayer Leverkusen, anything goes. Anything goes, and more so, I'm not capable of assessing whether what Roma are capable of at this stage. Like, what is going to be the main driver behind
Right.
whether they succeed or not? Is it going to be the European pedigree that they've collected over the last few years, or is it going to be what De Rossi is trying to instill in them right now?
I mean, the thing I find the most interesting is we now see De Rossi, Roma as a whole. I mean, this is the first point of the season, so middle of March, where you have had Romelu Lukaku, Paulo Dybala playing consistently, and now for the first time for the entire season, you have now reached a point where you are able to rest them for the very first time, middle of March. Think about it. When have they both been healthy? They've both played consistently to the point where they are able to be rested. Hasn't happened. Has not happened. It's an interesting thing to see that sort of coincides with their best run of form. Obviously, it goes beyond that, but I mean, it does sound too simple to say Romelu Lukaku, Paulo Dybala. Like Roma will go as far as those two can take them. I mean, that's what your best players do.
Right.
It doesn't seem like rocket science to me.
No, but De Rossi said it himself. I'm trying to get this team to show that they can play without Paulo Dybala and Romelu Lukaku.
Can we wait after the season for that?
I actually no,
maybe in
I don't think so. I mean,
uh,
I don't think so. I don't think it has to be that way. Like we've driven ourselves to a position where yes, that seems to be the automatic answer. Yeah, you can't be at your best without Paulo Dybala or Romelu Lukaku. But doesn't matter if you're at your best. If you manage to instill confidence and also some kind of system where other players like Azmoun can slot in and take over. Azmoun did really well tonight. Azmoun
He
did
did.
really well.
I've been waiting to touch on to him because, listen, he again. I am going to apply the standard that I have been taught to apply to guys like him because I had to listen to the standard on Sky Sport where it felt like I was paying €40 to be beaten over the head, to be spoken about. When it comes to certain strikers, it is okay if they don't score a lot of goals as long as they work hard. So I am only going to apply the standard that I have said is only applied to certain players that specific members of the larger like media conglomerates say it is okay to apply to. Okay, Azmoun tonight did way more than I ever saw Mandzukic, Morata do in one of these ugly away European fixtures. Okay, I do not care if he does not score. If you look at the things he does, man, it is obviously the point
No,
of
of
a
course.
striker is
Yeah.
to score goals. So I'm
And
not going
he
to.
never plays in easy contexts. Like he's
No,
always
no,
he's always put out there when the going's is tough. When the going's tough, and you have to like make sense of the situation one way or another.
I mean, Rain, 4 goal lead on aggregate. I could not think of somebody with a more perfect profile than him to put out there. He's born for matches like this. The work rate the guy has is to me astounding. Astounding. And again, I had to listen to years on Sky Sport of this crap where Mandzukic scores 2 goals an entire season, starting every single match. And we are supposed to completely put that out of mind because the work rate that he does. Allegri, he doesn't ask him to score goals. Yeah, okay, yeah. He doesn't ask one of his forwards to score goals. Okay, so he works hard. Great. That's all I'm going to care about then. That is all I care about when it comes to Azmoun. And I thought he did perfect today. Even the fact, I was surprised he played Cristante. I thought he was going to rest him, put
One yellow
Paredes
card
out there.
away. Yeah.
Um,
Him and Dika were one yellow card away from suspension.
In Dika, as we know, he did receive the yellow card. So he will he's going to miss the first match of the next round. But I mean, just to end it there. I mean, so we've been talking of like potential draws for. I think we're going on like 10 minutes now. Neither of us still have said definitively who would we want. When it comes to these sorts of matches, I know you said like the English teams they struggle away from home. I mean, for me, what I always look at is what is the most difficult environment when it comes to for in the context of Roma. What is the most difficult environment? Okay, well, Marseille, difficult environment.
Yeah,
Benfica,
San Siro with Milan.
Yes,
Roma don't
always
have a
difficult
track record there. So.
I don't even want to say San Siro. I said it too much in these recent months. I'm just going to say Atalanta or West Ham, right?
Atalanta, West Ham. It sounds reasonable, just because. Yeah, but West Ham, because you never know what you can get from these English teams when they're playing exactly away in a tough crowd, and Atalanta just because fuck them, it's like just fuck them. I can't.
Oh my gosh!
And it would be great. And at the end of the day, for me, there is no. I said it so many times. There is no more. I don't expect this team to reach the final. I want to see them do well, but as you mentioned, the schedule that we're facing as well in the league. That continues to be the primary focus for me, to see if this team can balance its focus. If not, then at least continue to fight at all costs in the league, because that's something that, whereas we've seen this team build a clear track record in Europe, we haven't seen this team deliver in the final weeks of the season in God knows how long. When was the last time we saw this team be consistent in Serie A as the season came to an end? I fail to recall the last time it happened. Must have
No,
been.
well, I mean, we have joked on here how many times where,
2017. It must have been the year of
you
the
know,
Champions League semifinal. It must have been 17-18 that where Roma
yeah,
were
every
consistent.
season of Paulo Fonseca, March, April, May were the death
Yeah,
march.
yeah. And
I
and
mean,
with and with Mourinho the same, with the exception of
yes,
European football, the final weeks were utter torture in the league. So that's the only trend I'm looking for De Rossi to change. I want Roma to change the course of their fate in Serie A. That's about it as for my expectation. With regards to the draw, give me Atalanta, give me West Ham.
yes,
I'll be
yeah,
happy.
yeah, yeah. I completely agree with you. Those are the two. Again, any chance that I have the opportunity to slag off Bergamo, I'm going to do it. So just by way of that, give me Atalanta. I am going to try and do this with a straight face as to trying to break down what Roma should be expecting against a Sassuolo team managed by Ballardini. Uh, uh,
Ballardini fighting against relegation, mind you. Yeah.
yeah.
Ballardini, Ballardini who led
I mean,
Cremonese win against you last year.
yeah,
Remember, he comes in, he
yeah.
wins against
Oh, we
Napoli, and
remember.
then he
Yes,
wins against Roma. So this is going to be tooth and nail. It's going to be ugly. This is going to be ugly, but it's going to be at least
ugly.
at the Stadio
Yes,
Olimpico. Paulo Dybala back, hopefully Romelu Lukaku back. But it, I don't know, man. It just
I
comes down
can't
to
even begin.
it just comes down to the energy. I think the energy right now is right. Even though today we lose, yes, it's disappointing to see this, the change in the pattern, which was mostly positive. Tonight we come out defeated, but still, we are on to something. And De Rossi knows that
Yes,
we're onto something. Clearly, the team is working to intensify their movements on the pitch. They run a lot more. They are trying.
they run
Clearly,
so much more.
they're clearly trying to last longer than 50, 60 minutes. That's the area of focus for De Rossi right now, is to get this team running with a side like Sassuolo, who are who just came off a win that
Yes,
puts
against
them in
our.
a great advantage
It was
against.
only going to come against one person, by the way.
Yes, Eusebio.
They don't win for
Eusebio.
months, and then it comes against
Eusebio.
one man.
Eusebio. So
Like
it
clockwork.
we
Like
have
clockwork.
to find a way to just not even let the game be questioned. We cannot even let
No.
Sassuolo get a sniff of the idea that they could get a result. It just has to be an absolute barrage of chances for Roma, and of actually chances being converted. That's about it. There is no more analysis as to that game. It's all about having the right players on the pitch and having a team that wants to fight and doesn't take the result for granted just because it's Sassuolo. Because this Sassuolo will are desperate, and you never want to face a team that is desperate. Tonight we faced Brighton. I thought they would be desperate. They didn't really convey that. They seemed uncertain of what they wanted to do,
Yes.
which was for me unexpected, given how much talk had been built up to that match. But with Sassuolo, it's clear that you're facing a team that is doing anything it can to avoid relegation. There is a lot at stake for them. If they go down, Carnevali becomes jobless.
Oh gosh, they have to
So
go down.
they
Is
have
there
to go.
anyone more deserving
They
or
have to go
more
down.
that you would enjoy more?
They have to go down. That's the
I
obvious
mean,
right there. Sassuolo have to go
yeah.
down.
Well, the
Start
interviews
from game.
of Carnevali
I would love
are
to get. I would love
uh,
even for that to happen, just because of that, because I would not have to transcribe what the guy is saying. So, please
well,
get this right. Go home, recharge, play against Sassuolo at the Stadio Olimpico, and just demolish him, and make it clear what your intentions are for the coming weeks. And the intention should be consistent, unlike in previous years.
Yes, I mean, even in such a short time, Ballardini has instilled at least some form of solidity into them that they didn't have before. So in the two matches he's there, in two games, they conceded only one goal. Prior to that, they conceded 6 to Napoli, 3 to Empoli, 3 to Atalanta, only 1 to Torino, 4 to Bologna, 1 to Monza, 3 to Juve. I mean, a complete and utter crap show. This is what Ballardini does. This is his specialty. If you are in the absolute shits of the table, you call this guy and he will get you to play the ugliest, most horrific, yet somehow effective football that shithousing would be a compliment to the way they play and how Ballardini prefers to play. Just don't get hurt, get the victory. They're going to come out and try to do everything. The fouls galore. It's just going to be ugly. Just don't get hurt, get the victory, get the hell out of there, and then move on. I think it's as simple as that. Okay, we will be back after the match against Sassuolo. So until next time, ciao.